Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Billy Dees podcast. I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If this is your first time, you can find the Billy Dees podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts are found, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Stitcher, on down the line. You can also follow me or tweet me on Twitter, more or less my social media home on Twitter at Billy Dees. You just have to be nice now. Don't have to agree, just be nice. Putting this show together, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about some of the stuff we've done in 2020, and there's no way I can hit all of the guests and give you a sampling. We've had a tremendous year this year, 2020, as far as guests go. Despite the COVID, despite the limited amount of ways that we could interview people, we've had some fantastic guests. We're also going to preview a little bit of what's going on in early 2021. And putting this show together, like I said, it's kind of an odd time period between Christmas and New Year's because people are extremely busy, but they're also kind of not at the same time. Their schedules are broken and some other things. And I said, you know what, this is a good opportunity. We've had some new listeners come on board the past several weeks, quite a few of them, as a matter of fact. And thank you so much for tuning in. We figured we'd kind of give you an overview of, if you're new, give you an overview of what we do here. And if you're an old listener, we can kind of review some of the things that we did, maybe some things that you might have missed, and you can go back and check out the programs. Everything we're going to talk about here today has been, or I should say, is available on our playlist. And you can find our playlist here again anywhere that you find podcasts. You can find the Billy Dees podcast pretty much. There's a few places we're not there, but most of the time, on most of the major networks, we are there. Check us out. We're also on YouTube, and we're also on Facebook. We now have a Billy Dees podcast Facebook page. And in all honesty, though, our history, we're not a newcomer. We're not somebody who has jumped on the podcasting bandwagon. We've been around for years, and our listenership comes primarily from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other audio based formats, but we have recently, this last year, started a YouTube and a Facebook channel. I would say for the most part, we do mostly interviews. We really don't have a genre. We talk a lot to creators, and authors are a mainstay of that. We talk to comedians, other podcasters, vloggers, so on down the line, bloggers, the standard bloggers. And we've had, for me, it's so fulfilling to get behind the creative process of other people. And that's a lot of what we do. I also throw in a commentary every once in a while, and we're going to give you a sample of that. And, here again, you get told a lot of things, and you can't take all the suggestions. But I have been hearing that we should do more commentary throughout the year, so we might turn up the frequency of that as well. We've also recently done some live podcasting, live content. I believe now with people with COVID and everything, consuming content in different ways, I've noticed that live content is something that people are interested in. So anyway, we're going to talk about the program a little bit and give you some samples. And as I mentioned, we do a lot with authors. And one of there's actually a publisher, HO Press, Shorehouse Books. And the lady behind that is Donna Kavanaugh. And she has a website that's kind of a vehicle for her publishing brands, and that's humoroutcast.com. That is the place to take a humor break. If you haven't had a chance yet, do check out that website. Many talented writers over there, humoroutcast.com. And we do a lot of their podcasts. you can simply go to that website, click on the podcast tab, and all of their podcasts are listed there. And we're very happy to do many of their author-based interviews. And one of the ones that I want to play for you is with Bill Spencer. And one of the things that we try to do here at the Billy Dees podcast when I'm talking to an author or a creator of any kind is we really don't want to produce programs that sound like infomercials. I mean, it's just not a good thing. We want each episode here at the Billy Dees podcast, for the audience sake, to have some intrinsic value, whether it's entertaining or what have you. And also, that also works for the guest, because the guest becomes that much more intriguing if they're giving you little tips on how they write, or maybe why they wrote the story that they did, or how they came across the story. And we're going to just sample that a little bit with Bill. Bill Spencer. He is the first author that I'm going to play a sample for you from. Bill Spencer has a book out called Uranus is Always Funny. And I can't say that without smirking, so it must be true. And these are short essays to make you laugh. And right here, I'm just going to play a little sample about some working advice Bill has for aspiring authors.
What I would tell my freshman composition students is they need to think a lot about their purpose for writing and their audience. And I think that applies not only to essay writing, but to any kind of writing, even if it's creative. I would tell my students, Edgar Allan Poe wrote that you need to figure out what effect you want to have on your audience before you begin to write. And so that's the same thing as purpose. Like, what are you trying to achieve with your writing? And for me, I want my audience to laugh. I want to give them the gift of laughter.
Sure.
And so that's what I'm trying for. And kind of closely related to that is the importance of audience. You need to know to whom are you writing. And you talked about with stand-up, audiences are different. It changes night to night, but you do need a good idea of who it is you're trying to reach and what are their interests. And so the way that what I would turn this into in the way of practical advice to aspiring writers is they need to find somebody that they trust, a kind of a writing buddy, to give them feedback on their drafts. Whenever they write something, get feedback from somebody you trust. Now, some people join writers groups. I'm very fortunate. My wife is a brilliant editor, and she looks at everything before I publish it. And if she says it's not funny, out it goes.
Right. Bill Spencer right there. Uranus is Always Funny. Available on Amazon. Short essays to make you laugh. Also, for HO Press, Shorehouse Books, and HumorOutcast.com, we interviewed an author who goes by Will 3, and Will 3 has a novel called Hartley Law. And he also gave some great information. If you happen to be a writer, or if you just enjoy knowing what the author was putting together and some of the tools that he was using, one of the things that Will 3 talked about during our interview was how you balance, let's say, reality-based content with entertaining fictional content. When is it too much reality? When is it too cumbersome to go through a lot of details that the real world offers? And how do you balance that with making it entertaining, telling a good story? And he gave a great answer. Here it is. Will 3.
That's a good question. The technical part, what I wanted to do without playing a spoiler, there is a technical aspect to the book. So the story follows the events leading up to a trial, and what happens, the necessary steps before you even walk into the courtroom. But then there's the actual courtroom scene, which is technical. I wanted to write the story in a way that, another attorney could read it and say, this is believable. That may have taken some artistic liberties here and there, but it's believable. But at the same time, if I wrote the story how the law actually is practiced, it would be very dull and very boring, so it wouldn't be good. But on the flip side of that, what I found the most interesting, so I'm writing about, Ari Meyer, who is a veteran public defender. And if you know anything about the public defender's office, the people that work there try cases every day. They're in court every single day. If it's not a full-blown trial, it's motions. It's just constant courtroom. And that's not my law practice. I have been to court. I've had trials to some extent more complicated, some more complicated than others. But I don't think anyone would ever describe me as a trial lawyer like you would describe someone from the public defender's office. So I wrote, I based my character of like what I never was, kind of the complete opposite of me. So if you read about Ari, he's dashing and he's brilliant in court and he's making crazy arguments off the top of his head. And, just everything that, that just was never my practice. So I never really experienced that. So it was kind of writing like, if I could do this, what would I like to be like, and hopefully I got that.
Okay. We'll throw you right there. Another one of our categories of guests, I guess you could say, is that of people who just have a story that is very compelling. And I get approached every so often by people who aren't necessarily talking about a book or anything, but they've been through something and they want to share their story. And sometimes it helps the audience to hear these stories. And I believe a lot of times, if you've been through something that is very traumatic or what have you, sometimes I feel it sometimes helps to share your story with others. And we had a Stephanie on the program this past year. Stephanie was very severely injured by a drunk driver. And she told her story on our program. And I asked her about forgiveness. And this is what she said. So I'll come back to that one question about forgiveness. I've got some religious friends. I'm not really a person of faith. Faith is a gift that I haven't been given. But, they often say that, to forgive, you are undoing a burden that you are carrying. When you don't forgive, you are carrying that burden all the time. I'm not sure it would work that way with me or not. Has it worked that way with you? Do you have forgiveness for the person who hit you?
I know I should. I know it's the right thing to do. I know we learned in divorce care that you can forgive, but you don't forget kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm there yet. I try not to focus on what he did to me. I just try and focus on getting better. So, I don't think I've really approached that subject quite yet.
I understand.
So, yeah.
Well, you're well within your rights to feel that way. I probably couldn't do it. Getting through all this, trying to shape a positive message for others. You're here to tell a story. I know that you've done other programs. What is your hope in telling this story? Do you want to be an example for those who have been through it, or what do you want your message to be?
Just try and dig deep down when things like this happen, these traumas, and find your courage, find your voice. I don't know if I'm really a role model or an example. I'm just trying to take care of me. But if others view me as that, I'm glad. But I just think that you need to, Mr. Rogers used to say, like, look for the helpers. So look for the helpers in times of crisis. So because I've had those helpers, that's enabled me to be more compassionate towards others and be more positive. So I think I just want to spread more positivity. Even though my life sucks right now, there have been a lot of blessings and a lot of lessons.
Stephanie's story, very powerful. You can find the full interview and any of the clips that we're playing on today's episode. You can find the full episode under the Billy Dees podcast, found pretty much anywhere podcasts are found. Coming up next, we have a clip from Lenora. Now, Lenora has been on our podcast twice this year. First, she tells her story of recovery. She has quite the journey of things that she has been through. And she told that story in a very heartfelt manner. And then I believe it was around Thanksgiving, we invited her on to do a live show. And because it was Thanksgiving, we talked about gratitude and kindness and all of these other things. And we got into a little discussion about what it means to tell somebody that you love them. And it was an interesting part of the conversation. I want to play that for you. Now, you can find Lenora on TikTok. And her account is It's a New Dawn for You. And it's pretty much as it sounds, except it's a new dawn, numeral for you, YOU. And she also has a podcast. It's a new dawn for you. This is our little discussion with Lenora.
Love.
And that's something I wanted to mention too. You and I had a conversation before about people saying to each other that they love you. Okay. And you talk about that. That's something that you like to do with people, especially when you care about them or whatever. It's important to say, I love you. And a lot of people are a little put off by that. But one of the things I heard on TikTok that to me was very profound is if you can hate somebody for no reason, if you can say, I hate you because you support Trump or you support Biden or whatever, I hate you because of that. If you can hate somebody for no reason, why can't you love them for no reason?
Bingo.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that it's really not that hard to say when you get to know someone, and it doesn't necessarily have to be anything in regard to how you normally think of love. Just caring about another human being's spirit, their essence, what makes them human, a part of them that thinks and feels and desires and all that. Just say, hey, you know what? I love you. And men won't say that to each other for a lot of reasons, and sometimes men are afraid to say it to a woman because they think that, oh, maybe she's going to take it the wrong way. And there's always a reason not to do it when it comes to love, but we don't have any hesitation when it comes to hate. Nothing stops us from voicing that opinion.
So wise, Billy.
I don't know if I'm wise.
No, it's true. It's
a wise thought.
But I know exactly what you were talking about from the TikTok. The whole, it's so easy for us to hate, and you just never know who you're gonna change just by saying I love you.
Yeah.
Or I care, or I make it a point to send texts to people, random texts.
That's great.
Pretty much. Or I even FaceTimed you out of the blue.
Yes.
I was doing that. Now I'm doing that. Now that's my new thing, because not that FaceTime is a new thing, but I don't know why. I just came upon it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let me just FaceTime this person.
Yeah.
So I'll just
yeah.
All
right.
And people that I haven't spoken to, like, oh my God, hey, how you doing? I can't, I've had conversations that were like an hour long on FaceTime. It makes them feel so good.
Yeah.
We don't need much.
There are a number of different guests that we have on the program semi-regularly, I would say. And Dorothy Rosby is one of those people. Dorothy is a humor writer. I'm not sure how many publications she's featured in, but she's absolutely wonderful to have on the program. We're always glad to have her. And she was actually on one of our live podcasts this past year, 2020. And we got to talking about masks. And one of the things that's brilliant about humorists is they can take things in a direction that you don't expect them to go. And she started talking about how much she loves masks and how much she's going to miss them. And she played it so straight, I actually didn't catch it right away. But it was brilliant. And here again, you can catch the entire interview in our playlist on the Billy Dees podcast. But here's a little sample for you. You can also find Dorothy Rosby on Twitter at Dorothy Rosby.
Well, Billy, I think masks are awesome. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm going to miss mine when this is all over. I am.
Really?
Well, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but a lot of us, me included, just look better with half of our face.
Oh, please.
You know, and I'm glad it's this half because, you know, in case we're driving or something.
Yeah.
But they do a lot of things. I have a bad habit of talking to myself. Do you do that?
Oh,
and
certainly.
I don't usually do it in public, but when I've kind of gotten into the habit of with this mask on, I forget, I'm at the grocery store. I'm like, yeah, it's way more than 13 items, or you're going the wrong way, or, where's your mask? I'm worried that I'm going to have a hard time breaking the habit when this is all over, because I'm going around the store mumbling. So there's some real benefits. I mean, besides just the obvious one to me.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree with that. I have a tendency to smirk at inappropriate times.
Yes.
So that's kind of a good thing that I guess maybe that I'm held in check that way.
Yeah.
Now you're in I can never keep this straight. South Dakota, right?
I'm in South Dakota, land of Mount Rushmore, and I'll tell you what, those guys aren't wearing masks either.
Yes, they're
Georgia,
not.
No, they're not.
Another set of podcasters, actually, that we talked to this past year was Jen and Christine. Christine has actually been on the program more than once. They are both comedians, and together they have a podcast called Moms Are Not Funny. And you can find them on Twitter at Moms Are Not Funny. And what they basically do is bring people on, mostly comedians, to talk about their experiences with their mothers and possibly how it influenced their material or what have you. And during that discussion, I offered up a little story about my grandmother. And I want to go ahead and play that segment for you right now. I can tell you that my mom was pretty funny. She passed away, unfortunately, about 2 years ago. But my grandmother, who died years ago, her mother, she was a character, and she was way ahead of her time in terms of the whole men thing. And my grandparents, both of them, were characters. And I often wish that I could somehow, if I was a screenwriter and wanted to, do a sitcom, some of their conversations.
Oh, wow.
And I remember one time my grandpa was emotional, and he would get teary-eyed sometimes, even if he was having an argument, even if there was nothing. He was just, he was one of those old European immigrants, and would get very emotional. And I remember one time they were having a real bad fight, and my grandmother said to him, and I can still hear her saying this. She says, people see you cry, and they say, oh, what a sweet old man, but I know what a son of a bitch you really are. and this line was a gem. She goes, your tears are my piss.
Oh, that's so good.
That's something that you would see like on an HBO sitcom. It's such
amazing. Amazing.
And they had conversations like that all the time. And I used to love being over there because they were the type that, here again, the old school type. They were arguing all the time, but as soon as something happened to one or the other, one of them was sick or something, like, oh, please. And my grandma would always, I'm not exactly sure she had broken English, but it was Matka Boska, which means Mother Mary.
Yeah. Oh.
And you could tell they loved each other, but they were bickering all the time, and the lines were just coming all the time.
They probably get better with time. They probably keep on adding to it.
So I actually a good one came to mind. So we had Jill Kimmel on our show.
Okay.
And her mom loves to scare people. In particular, her sister, who is like very, very nice. And her sister was having surgery in the hospital. And so Jill's mom hid under the bed and waited
while the
there.
sister was sleeping.
Oh, wow.
Waited till she woke up to like reach out and terrify her.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I just think that's so creative and
weird.
Just so out
funny.
there.
No wonder why all three of her kids are comedians.
Moms are not funny right there. Very energetic, entertaining pair right there. Do check them out. Moms Are Not Funny, the podcast. Also, I want to play a very energetic person. Her name is Julie Anderson, and you can find her on TikTok at Julie Anderson 426. She likes to be inspiring. She likes to be energetic. And one of the things that she really talks about is Generation X and how, I'm one of those, how we're often the forgotten generation, but we have so many good qualities. And her content, Generation X, great stuff. Here's a little sample of our conversation with Julie. You were also part of a generation that was coming in on the internet era. I mean, that's the early 90s. It was actually available yet, although not many people had it in the early 90s. By the time we got to the mid 90s, it was starting to become understood. Yeah. So you were actually brought up in the day and age of the internet.
Yeah, I was after high school for sure. So it was, I think it was, for some reason, I think it's like 1996, but maybe it was later than that. But it was like, I mean, I was out of school. So I was like, I was of voting age. So I wasn't a kid. Like and I remember it was going on to a chat room. And it was just so like rudimentary, and it's like so amazing. You can like talk to different people around the world.
In the chat, sure.
And like trying to get on the internet.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was the dial-up. That was like a milestone was probably like Windows 95. That was a big deal. And then Windows 98, that was even bigger. And of course there was AOL. Everybody had AOL, and You've Got Mail, that was that whole deal. So you kind of came of age then. The Bill Clinton was the man. The 90s were good, as far as the economy goes. Entertainment, like you said, music was very diversified, and it was a good time. I mean, you had everything, like Metallica, and you had Dr. Dre, and you had everything. It was So
and when you grow up like that, of course, it's going to change, or it's going to shape your perspective, right?
Sure.
When you grow up and you're like, you like all this stuff, like it's not even a question. You're just like, oh, this is all. It's interesting. It changes the way you look at the world differently than someone who is just like, this is how I am. I am just like a country singer or whatever. Like you can't help it. And so that's why I like to say Gen X is a mindset and a vibe, because there's a lot of people that are just like older or younger, and they're like that. They're similar. So
yes, Generation X, you have to love us, don't you? Anyway, our next and our last clip here is going to be from a commentary that I did last year. And here again, we do commentaries every so often as well. And what this commentary was about, and you can find it in our playlist, was news. The evolution, let's say, of broadcast news from post-World War II to the present day. That's kind of what I talked about. And the point that I was making during this clip is we hear so much about fake news and how can we rely on certain news. But we as the listeners, as the consumers of news and content related to news, how much are we influencing that process by viewing the stuff that we like? Are we contributing to being fed news that's more pleasant to our ear than accurate? We as viewers of the news have to be more responsible. I'm not sure which created which, but we have a situation now when you factor in social media, when you factor in how news is presented on social media. What gets the clicks as opposed to what doesn't? And this speaks to ratings in broadcast. You know, what brings the viewers in as opposed to what doesn't? How is our behavior in terms of how we consume this information impacting what's given us? And it shouldn't be that way, but it is. You know, I personally like programs that challenge my viewpoints of things. And most people don't. This news you can lose is really code for news that you like. If you're conservative, watch us, because we're going to tell you stuff that makes you feel comfortable. And if you're liberal, we're going to give you the news that you really like. We're going to tell you how bad this president really is. And it feeds these bubbles. One of the things that I said earlier was how you can switch back and forth between two news programs and get the same facts presented in a different way, alternative facts, and a completely different outcome. Unfortunately, now that's how you have to get balanced news. And you have to be more aggressive in how you obtain information and what you read about. You want to make sure you double check the sources that these things are coming from. And really, that shouldn't be happening. That's what journalism is supposed to do for us. But it's gotten to the point now where news is synonymous with entertainment. It's all about selling that cereal, not really informing the public, because informing the public, unfortunately, is boring. And that's on us. That's on us, the viewer. We won't watch nuanced news reports because they're too long. You know, if we watch a video that's more than a minute long about whatever's going on, you know, we lose interest. And we certainly don't want to read anything because that takes too much time, too much effort, too much work. That's on us. Okay, this information is being fed to us based upon our habits because it sells cereal. And that's on us. A large part of that is our responsibility to that. One of the most difficult things you can do as an individual, this speaks to not only how you consume news, but how you live as a person. One of the most difficult and most challenging things that you can do is challenge yourself to actually consider the notion that you could be wrong, or that there's other things to consider about how you feel about a given subject. And that was like with the old days when news was a public service. You had to sit through news that you may or may not didn't like to get to your favorite program that started at 7 or 8. And now the entertainment begins for the evening begins during the news program. Or it's 24 hours a day on your favorite news network because they tell you what you like. And it's just not a matter of challenging what you're told, but it's a matter of challenging your own perspectives. Is this really all there is to know about this subject? How I feel about it? What I know about this subject, is that all I know? Or are there some known unknowns? What don't I understand? What questions should I be asking? Why should I accept the information that's coming to me as just the knowns that I need to know? Okay, just a snippet there of one of my commentaries from 2020. That one happens to be about news, and as I discussed earlier, we'll probably do some more commentaries throughout the year of 2021. 2021, how did that happen? Where does time go? I remember when the year 2000, when I was in school, that was like so far away, you know. It was like science fiction, and here we are almost 21 years after the year 2000. It's just unbelievable. The year kicks off. Our first episode of 2021 debuts on January 4th. Okay, that's a Monday. And it is with Linda Day Smith. She is the author of a book, Standing Against the Rage, which is a book about the absolutely horrific case of domestic violence that occurred to one family in the 1930s. And ultimately, this is a story of hope because it has to deal with a survivor and how that person was able to get on and live a very fulfilling life after this incident. And we also speak about, in generalities, about domestic violence in general. And once again, that's going to be this coming Monday, January 4th, 2021. Linda Day Smith, our author, Standing Against the Rage. Also coming up this year, I don't want to get too detailed because a lot of these interviews haven't been completely nailed down yet with all the T's crossed, but there's one that's coming up with a hospice nurse. This nurse has been in the presence of people dying many, many times. And she's going to talk about some similarities in terms of what happens, let's say, as people are crossing over. And she doesn't necessarily try to validate or dispute any spiritual beliefs that you may have or not have. But what she does do is say, hey, this is what happens. Take from it what you will. So that's going to be interesting too. I hope that comes together. That will be sometime shortly after the first of the year, probably late in January or the 1st of February. Lots of other good stuff coming up too. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Billy Dees. And I also have the Facebook page, the Billy Dees Podcast. Feel free to make a comment if you have any questions or suggestions. We try to at least recognize anything that anybody puts on our social media posts. And we greatly appreciate the feedback and we appreciate the listens. I am Billy Dees. Thank you very much for listening to our podcast today. And let's all have a great 2021. It's got to be better than 2020, right? My very best wishes to you for a very happy new year. Well, hello everyone. I am Billy Dees from the self-titled Billy Dees Podcast. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and many more of the best podcast networks. Join me for my commentary and interviews. Follow me on Twitter, real easy to find, at Billy Dees. I am Billy Dees. I'd love to have you listen in.